Manjula, can you start?
Yeah, we'll start. 1 second. People are just admitting.
Okay.
Akshay, shall we start? Akshay?
Yes, ma'am, we are live now.
Okay. A very warm good afternoon. A very warm good afternoon to one and all. Today, on the sixth day of Navadasha Samvada, I welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Sapna Pandurangi, Dr. Akshay, the organizing member of Navadasha Samvada, and all the audience for today's session. Dr. Sapna will be talking on the topic General Introduction and Principles of Management of Sleep Disorders. Okay. Today, and I call upon Ms. Pooja Hanchnal from final year BAMS, Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya Hubli, to introduce and welcome our today's guest speaker, Dr. Sapna Pandurangi. Pooja,
Yes,
are you
ma'am.
there? Yes. You can start.
Good afternoon to everyone. I, Pooja Hansnal, welcome you all for today's session. Now, I would like to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Sapna Pandurangi. Ma'am was born on 23 November 1985 at Sindhanur in Raichur district. Ma'am has also completed her primary education at Raichur and high school at KRECS Kittur. Ma'am has completed her MBBS from Navodaya Medical College, Raichur in June 2009. Ma'am has been affiliated to Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science Bangalore in May 2013. Ma'am is presently working as senior resident in Department of Psychiatry and consultant psychiatrist at Dr. Anand Pandurangi Sri Psychiatric Center, Dharwad. Ma'am is also interested in community psychiatric and mental health issues related to women. Ma'am has delivered mental health awareness lecture in various schools and colleges of Hubli and Dharwad. Ma'am, on behalf of everyone, I wholeheartedly welcome you. The session is over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. It is my immense pleasure to be a part of this national webinar. I would like to thank my friend Dr. Manjula and her team for inviting me to this seminar. So, today I will be presenting on a general introduction and principles of management of sleep disorders. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we are audible.
Yeah. So today I'll be presenting a topic on general introduction and principles of management of sleep disorders. This is an overview, introduction, neurobiology of sleep and wakefulness, stages of sleep, assessment, and common sleep disorders and management. Coming to introduction of sleep, sleep is nothing but it is a naturally recurring state with a period of decreased or absent consciousness alternating with wakefulness. They say that 1/3 of the human life it is occupied by sleep. And a few studies, they reported that 30% of the people, they suffer from some sort of sleep disorder. So is sleep really required? Yes, it is required to maintain the normal homeostasis, that is the internal environment of the body, to maintain the normal thermoregulation, to have a proper concentration, and for proper brain functioning. So let us see how this sleep is regulated. There is something called as a reticular activating system, which is present in the brain stem of the brain. So along with these, there are other nuclei, that is dorsal raphe nucleus and locus coeruleus, which secretes different neurotransmitters like serotonin, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, etc. So this reticular activating system, before reaching the cortex, it also sends its projection to hypothalamus and the thalamus. As you can see, the thalamus is the key control center for sleep and wake. In the hypothalamus, we have different neurotransmitters and the hormones like hypopretin or orexin, GABA, etc., which helps in the sleep and wake promotion. The offsetting or the sleep promoter is localized in the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus of the hypothalamus, and the onsetting, the wake promoter, is localized within the tuberomammillary nucleus of the thalamus. So what happens when this tuberomammillary nuclei is active? During when you are awake, this histamine is released to the cortex and also ventrolateral preoptic nuclei, and it inhibits the GABA, which is the sleep promoter. So this is how the person is awake, and these in turn activate the reticular activating system. So you can say that the person is conscious, alert, and awake. So during sleep, what happens when the ventrolateral preoptic nuclei is active? The GABA is released into the tuberomammillary nuclei, which is the sleep promoter is on, and the wake promoter is inhibited. So this is how the sleep is regulated. So these are the signals which these are the interconnections, and these all go to the cortex. These are the brain waves with hypocretin or orexin, histamine, acetylcholine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. These are required for maintenance of the awake cycle. And during the sleep, the GABA is released and the patient goes into sleep. So let us move on to the different stages of sleep. In the stages of sleep, you have non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement. During the normal sleep, these stages tend to occur in succession, forming a sleep architecture. This succession of the sleep stages culminating in the REM sleep leads to a sleep cycle. This sleep cycle, the length and the content of the sleep cycle changes throughout the night and with the age. So the percentage of the deep sleep is highest during the first half of the cycle, and it decreases as the night progresses. And the REM stage, that is rapid eye movement stage, is increased throughout the course of the night. So when the person falls asleep, it is after 90 to 100 minutes later the first REM period starts. So it is only about 10 minutes when the rapid eye movement stage is present. So as the night progresses, during the second half of the cycle, the REM period is increased and the NREM period comes down. So this sleep pattern, as I told it changes with the age. So we can say that the newborn sleeps for about 16 hours. Children can sleep for about 8 to 12 hours. Adult can sleep for about 6 to 8 hours, and the older age people can sleep for about 4 to 6 hours. So this is the EEG pattern, which you can see in different stages of the sleep. So now let us see what happens during this different sleep stages. As you fall asleep, you are into the stage 1 of non-rapid eye movement. During this stage, many people do complain of involuntary movements of the limbs. This is quite normal and need not be treated, because it is under whenever you are very tired or when you are under stressful conditions, this tends to happen. This involuntary movements tends to happen. The next stage is stage 2, where you have K complexes on the EEG pattern. So this is actually said that it is a peaceful state. Here you do not have any movements. So the next stage is stage 3. They have actually recently they have clubbed stage 3 and stage 4. So it is the one stage. So in the stage 3, you find different unusual characteristics. So what happens here is the pulse rate is reduced, the BP is reduced, the brain activity is reduced, the body musculature is reduced. So here in the EEG, you can see the slow wave pattern. during whenever you awaken the person 30 minutes or 1 hour after the person falling to sleep, then during that time you can see that the person is disoriented, he's very much confused. So there are many sleep problems which do occur in this NREM stage, that is somnambulism, somnology, and sleep terrors. So now let us move on to rapid eye movement. EEG pattern shows it is similar to that of wake record. So here the brain is active, but the muscle tone is there is a atonia of the musculature. The body movements does not take place, but only the brain is active as when you are awake. So here pulse rate increases, the BP increases, and the O2 consumption to the brain also increases. Uh, majority of uh, uh, majority of the dreams what occurs is during the REM sleep. Earlier there is a lot of stigma, there is a lot of misconception saying that dreams, whichever dreams that occur during the REM state, that is as the morning progresses, during the morning stage when there is when there are dreams, they tend to be real, but dreams do occur in the mornings and not in the midnights. So as I told, the EEG pattern in the NREM is slow, and in the REM it is fast. The muscle tone is reduced in NREM than in REM, and the heart rate, respiratory rate, and the blood pressure is slow when compared to REM stage. So the mental activity is none in REM, and there are story-like dreams in REM stage. So how to assess this sleep? Detailed history regarding the sleep and accurate history of concurrent medical and psychiatric disorders are very important. So evaluation of current medications, you need to ask if patient is on some medications. And prospective self-report, the sleep wake diaries or the sleep logs, behavioral measurements like actigraphy. Polysomnography, it is a gold standard for sleep assessment. In polysomnography, we assess for EEG, electroocculogram, electromyogram, then oronasal airflow, nasal pressure, rib cage and abdominal movements, and oximetry. Till now, we saw how the sleep is regulated, what are the different stages of sleep, and why sleep is required. Now let us move on to the topic proper, that is sleep disorder. Why it is important to know regarding the sleep disorders? It is because the sleep disorder, it is very dangerous and it is very expensive to treat. It causes a lot of pressure to the sleepy individuals, not only to the sleepy individuals, but also to the family and the society. Because majority of the road traffic accidents, that is motor vehicle accidents, do takes place because of sleep disorders. So that is why it is very, very important to diagnose the sleep disorders and to treat the sleep disorders. In psychiatry, the classificatory system, they have given different sleep disorders. So the first one is insomnia. Okay, I think everybody must have faced the insomnias in some part of the other time. That is because that is nothing but there is a dissatisfaction with the sleep, which is characterized by difficulty falling asleep, difficulty maintaining the sleep, or there is difficulty returning to sleep after awakenings during the night. So the criteria to say that it is an insomnia, there should be at least 3 nights per week, and the duration should last for at least 3 months to say that it is as insomnia. So there are different causes for insomnia. Insomnia can be for a brief period, that is during the anxiety, or it can be a transient insomnia. Transient in case of when there is a loss of some loved one, there is a grief. During that time, you can face this insomnia for a short period of time. They say that around 30 to 45% of the adults, they face insomniac disorder. So it is more common in males than in females. Age effect is not universally observed. Okay, now coming to what are the different causes of insomnia. Primary insomnia, here it is independent of any medical or mental condition. Here the patient reports of difficulty in initiating the sleep, maintaining the sleep, and there are frequent awakenings of the sleep. Patient, whenever he tries to sleep, the sense of frustration increases because he is unable to fall asleep. The initiation of the sleep is not taking properly. So what are the secondary causes? Secondary causes can be because of some medications or can be because of some medical condition or psychiatric causes which I mentioned here, that is depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or substance use disorders. You all must have heard people saying that if you consume alcohol, you get a better sleep. So whenever you consume alcohol, one drink or more than a drink, the sleep architecture is impaired. Initially, the person may find that he is getting good sleep, but even though the duration of the sleep is normal, but the sleep architecture is disturbed. So they will have a rebound phenomena. It suppresses their rapid eye movement. That is why they complain of vivid dreams, because dreams occur in REM stage. So they say that it is difficult to return back to the normal sleep cycle. It takes around 3 to 4 months for them to return back to the normal sleep cycle. So if a person is abstinent from alcohol and he continues to have sleep disturbance, they have the greater chance for the relapse. They might go and consume alcohol because they do complain of insomnia. So here it becomes very, very important to treat insomnia in order to keep the person abstinent from the substances. Coming to tobacco, people do smoke or chew tobacco in order to keep themselves awake to, for example, during exams or you are preparing for some important event. To keep yourself awake, people consume tobacco, chew tobacco. They think that they're awake, but the fragmentation of the sleep is disturbed and they do complain of frequent dreams. So the next cause is schizophrenia. In schizophrenia, people do complain of auditory hallucinations. Because of those things, they are unable to sleep. Their sleep is disturbed. The next cause is depression. In the depression, sleep is the cardinal sign because they complain of frequent awakenings, or even though the duration may be for 6 to 8 hours, but they say that the sleep is not sufficient for them because they have early morning awakening. They do not feel fresh even after they had a good duration of the sleep. The mood symptoms do increases during the mood symptoms worsens in the early morning because here the stage 3 and 4 of the NREM is reduced. The REM latency is reduced in depression patient. So now coming to anxiety. In the anxiety disorders, patients do complain of insomnia because they have fear of going to sleep. They will be ruminating whether they will get sleep or no. The other condition is mania, where they complain of a decreased need for sleep. So these are the secondary causes and the psychiatric causes for insomnia. The other causes can be like conditioned insomnia, or it is also called as psychophysiological insomnia. In the psychophysiological insomnia, it is called as conditioned because they are conditioned to sleep in the same bed, in the same bedroom. So whenever there is a change of the place or the change of the bed, patient do complain of insomnia. So coming to the treatment of insomnia, there can be pharmacological and non-pharmacological treatment. In the pharmacological treatment, the currently approved are benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines, they should not be given for more than 2 weeks. Tricyclic antidepressants, melatonin receptor agonists, and the antihistaminics. These are the pharmacological treatment for insomnia. Now, coming to non-pharmacological treatment. Non-pharmacological treatment, you have stimulus control, sleep restriction therapy, relaxation training, cognitive restructuring of the irrational sleep related beliefs, and universal sleep hygiene. I hope you are able to see the sleep hygiene measures. So the main thing is you should ask the patient to make sleep a priority. Keep the same sleeping schedule and ask them to avoid any stimulants, that is caffeine, nicotine, or eating or exercising just before going to bed. So ask them to avoid napping, taking a nap in the morning hours, and keep the work materials out of your bedroom. The bed should be meant only for the sleep. So they should keep the work materials out of the bedroom. And you should keep your bedroom at a comfortable temperature. It should not be too hot, neither too cold. And make your bedroom as dark as possible. So there should not be any stimulants, like avoid taking caffeine or consuming tea after 6 p.m. And make your bedroom as dark as possible, and avoid keeping the alarm clocks in front of your eyes. So what you advise in stimulus control is, in first thing you should ask, go to sleep only when you are sleepy. Do not lie on the bed and become frustrated that you're not getting sleep. If you're not getting sleep, then you can go do some activities, not the stimulant activities, which increases the brain stimulation. So you can do some activities, and whenever you are sleepy, just come back to the bed and fall asleep. And keep the same sleep cycle. That is, if you are sleeping at 9:30, go to bed at 9:30, and if you are waking up at 6 o'clock, keep the same sleeping schedule. The next sleep disorder is narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is nothing but extreme daytime sleepiness that is marked by episodes of irresistible need to sleep. There is unintentional sleep episodes or napping at least 3 times per week for at least 3 months. Here in the narcolepsy, what happens is there is a irresistible need to sleep. They say that I cannot avoid sleeping. They can sleep in an inappropriate situations or inappropriate places while eating or while cooking or while driving. So because they are unable to avoid their sleeps. They say that they fall into a sleep and they awake within 10 to 15 minutes after they fall asleep. So here what happens is they directly go to the REM stage. After, as I told earlier, it takes about 90 to 100 minutes for the first REM to occur. But whereas in narcolepsy, they say that it is within 10 minutes you go into rapid eye movements. So what are the symptoms of narcolepsy? There are episodes of catalepsy, that is sudden or bilateral loss of muscle tone with preserved consciousness. It is often precipitated by some emotions such as laughter. So the prevalence is 0.02 to 0.04% in the general population. So the studies have found that in patients with narcolepsy, here the deficiency is in hypocretin or the orexin. As I had explained it in the sleep regulation, that hypocretin is required for the stimulation to keep the person awake. But here there is a genetic deficiency of this hypocretin or the orexin. So that is why the patient go into sleep. There is a strong association with HLA marker, and they say that about 85 to 90% of the hypocretin neurons is lost in narcolepsy patient when you compare with non-narcolepsy patients. So here treatment becomes very, very important, because here when the patient falls asleep in an inappropriate places, inappropriate timings, they are more prone for accidents. So the treatment goal here is to reduce the daytime sleepiness and to manage the symptoms of catalepsy. Catalepsy is nothing but the loss of muscle tone. There is sudden loss of bilateral muscle tone with preserved consciousness. And manage the symptoms of catalepsy, sleep paralysis, and sleep-related hallucinations when present. And pharmacotherapy includes some stimulants like methylphenidate, modafinil, atomoxetine, bupropion, and anti-cataleptic drugs like venlafaxine or fluoxetine and tricyclic antidepressants can be used. The psychosocial treatment includes they can schedule their regular brief naps. Coming to circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorders. So before going to the circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorders, one need to understand what is circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is nothing but it is the biological rhythm. It is a biological clock within the body. It is present in the, it is maintained by suprachiasmatic nucleus present in the hypothalamus. So it is with the environmental cues like light, the biological clock is set. So what happens in the circadian rhythm? There is a mismatch between the internal, that is biological clock, and the environmental clock. So the essential feature is persistent or recurrent pattern of sleep-wake disturbance characterized by abnormal timing of sleep or sleep propensity. So it can manifest as insomnia, excessive sleepiness, or some combination of both. In the circadian sleep-wake rhythm, wake disorders, you can have a shift work disorder or jet lag type. In the persons who work shift-wise, like in some industries where they have continuous night duties, night shift, they will have a problem with this biological clock. Some can get adjusted within a week, but some do complain of persistent insomnia, or rebound phenomena can occur, like rebound hypersomnolence can occur, that is excessive sleepiness. The same thing what happens in the jet lag type, when you travel to the different time zones, during that time it becomes very, very difficult for the person to get adjusted to that time zone. It takes for about a week to get adjusted to that time zone, because your biological clock is set, which is regulated by different hormones. So it takes for a week. It takes a week for this biological clock to get adjusted to the different time zones. Patient whoever gets adjusted, they do not complain of any insomnia, but few they do complain of insomnia or excessive hypersomnolence, because they are not able to adjust to this time zones. So only those patients who are unable to adjust, or which is causing difficulty in their work or in the day-to-day activities, only those patients are treated for this jet lag type. So how to assess? There is something called as actigraphy measurements for 17 to 14 days. It is actually a device which is worn like a wristwatch. So it continuously monitors your sleep cycle for a period of 7 to 14 days. And there are a few biological markers, that is dim light, melatonin onset, or core body temperature. Treatment, you can give both light and melatonin. There is light therapy. When given at specific times, it can act to reset the biological clock or the circadian clock. Modafinil, it is FDA approved for use in shift workers with excessive daytime sleepiness. And behavioral interventions like regular sleep scheduling should be taught, and we should also teach them about the universal sleep hygiene measures. So now let us move on to parasomnias. Parasomnias are nothing but unpleasant or undesirable behavioral or experiential phenomena which occur predominantly or exclusively during the sleep period. Contrary to the popular belief, most parasomnias are not the manifestation of underlying psychiatric disease. So they are broadly classified into those occurring in association with the non-rapid eye movement sleep stage, or those occurring in association with rapid eye movement sleep. So the first thing what you see is sleepwalking. It is usually seen in first or the first half or the second end of the third and fourth NREM stages. So during when the patient is in a deep stage of the sleep, during the slow wave, which you can see in the EEG. Here what happens is patient wakes up from the bed, ambulates towards the other room. There are repeated episodes of rising from the bed during the sleep and walking about. The individual's eyes are open with a blank and staring face. Here, the sleepwalker is relatively unresponsive to the efforts. And when you try to wake the patient, they are confused and they are disoriented. Okay, they can be, they do not trip, they do not fall, but sometimes they might sustain injuries also. So when you try to wake a person, when you try to wake a sleepwalking person, they are very much confused. They think that somebody is attacking them and might turn very violent, and in turn they might attack you. So that is why it becomes very difficult if you try to arouse them from their sleep. The sleepwalker is relatively unresponsive to the efforts of others to communicate with them or her, and can be awakened only with the great difficulty. This kind of thing you can, sleepwalking is usually seen in children between the age group of 4 to 8 years. And studies have shown that once they reach their adolescent period or the adulthood, the sleepwalking episodes comes down. Sleepwalking may also be associated with sleep talking, that is somnology. The next thing is sleep terrors. In the sleep terrors, the person is initiated by the loud scream. They wake up suddenly with a piercing cry or piercing scream. There will be extreme panic and they show signs of intense fear. They will have their heart pounding, they might have extreme sweating, tachycardia, tachypnea because of this autosomal arousal. This is followed by some prominent motor activity such as hitting the wall or running around, because patient becomes very restless. This also occurs in stage 3 and stage 4 of NREM period. When you try to wake a person with a sleep terror, they are also usually confused and disoriented. When you ask the same, when you try to ask about the episodes in the morning, they say that they don't remember anything. There is complete amnesia for the activity, and it is typical for sleep terrors. Usually, these kind of things, it follows some stressor, or if you are too tired. So what are the treatment goals? Treatment goals are environmental safety. That is, you should have heavy curtains over the windows, alarms and bedroom doors, and sleeping on the ground floor, because sometimes they might trip from the bed. And somatic treatments, that is pharmacotherapy, you can treat them with tricyclic antidepressants, such as imipramine and benzodiazepines such as clonazepam may be effective. Coming to REM sleep related parasomnias, that is nightmare disorder. Here bad dreams and nightmares are usually common and they are normal. Frequent and distressing nightmares are responsible for insomnia and patients are afraid to sleep because they have distressing nightmares. They say that I don't want to sleep. If I go to sleep, I will start having nightmares. So there will be anticipatory anxiety. Their heart will be pounding. They say that there is a fear to go to bed. This in turn causes insomnia. And because of this insomnia, the sleep cycle is disturbed, which in turn is related to frequent nightmares. So usually remembered in great detail, and immediately upon awakening, the individual is completely alert and oriented. When you saw in sleep terror, when you try to awaken the person, he is very much confused and disoriented, and he has amnesia for that event. So in nightmare disorder, they will be able to tell every detail of what all happened, and they are completely alert and oriented. This usually follows any traumatic conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, usually a setting of physical or sexual abuse, and post-traumatic stress disorder, usually seen in age group of 3 to 6 years. So they say that around 10 to 50% of the prevalence is around 10 to 50%, and in adults the prevalence is only 1%. So it is more commonly seen in a stressful condition in the childhood. So it becomes very, very important. It becomes as a psychiatrist, so it becomes very, very important to diagnose the nightmares in order to save the child. The treatment can be somatic treatments like prazosin, 10 to 16 mg. It reduces the nightmare frequency in post-traumatic stress disorder. Clonidine has been reportedly helpful. And psychosocial treatments, in that you have dream rehearsal therapy, that is scripting and rehearsal of new dream scenario to replace a common dream. So the other parasomnias are nocturnal enuresis, that is repeated voiding of urine in clothes during the sleep for consecutive months in 5-year-old child, more than 5-year-old child. So you can see a picture here. The child is very much embarrassed. He feels very guilty that he is bedwetting. It is more common in boys than in girls. If they have a family history of enuresis, the prevalence doubles. The prevalence is seen in 5 years of age, that is 25%. 10% of them are in 7 years. And after 10 years, the prevalence comes down, that is 5%. Causes can be primary, that is around 75 to 90% of the nocturnal enuresis, that is, it is falls under the primary. Primary is nothing but when the child has not attained the toilet training at all. Usually that the child is taught toilet training for about 3 years. If it persists, if the child keeps bedwetting for more than 4.5 to 5 years, then it is called as a primary. You cannot find any medical or psychiatric cause for the primary enuresis, because the child has not yet attained the toilet training. But whereas in secondary nocturnal enuresis, the child has attained the toilet training. There are periods where the child is very dry, that is not bedwetting, again he starts bedwetting. This is called as secondary. Secondary can be because of some stressful conditions or some other causes. So the prevalence is for about 25%. Here it becomes very, very important to diagnose and treat early, because there are chances where the child becomes very embarrassed. He cannot go to other places leaving his house. He becomes very guilty because he is bedwetting. So there are chances of the child having depression because of this nocturnal enuresis. So here in our day-to-day OPDs, we see many child coming with school refusal because uh, 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 decreased school performance, decreased academic performance because of this nocturnal enuresis, because they are very guilty and they are going into depression. So you can see that the child academic performance is coming down. So when you interview the child, you will get to know why the child is depressed. So the primary thing will not be the depression, but the primary thing will be nocturnal enuresis, because of which the child is guilty, the child is depressed, and the child's academic performance has come down. So there are different treatment modalities. One thing is that the proper history to be taken, why there is a nocturnal enuresis. Psychiatric, that is pharmacological treatment, you can treat the child with imipramine or desmopressin. And non-pharmacological management, that is psychological management. Uh, the picture I've shown some. Uh, it is a alarm unit. There is a alarm sensor which is attached to the child. Whenever the child is wet, the alarm there is a buzzer. The alarm is on, and the child wakes up from the sleep and he goes to the toilet. So over a period of time, over the period of time, the child learns to wake up early as soon as as soon as he becomes wet. The other thing is reward chart. It is nothing but the reinforcement. It is a self monitoring. We gave them a calendar. They have to self monitor. Uh, the if for suppose if the child is bedwetting for 20 days in a month, then you have to ask the child. You have to tell the child that if you are bedwetting today, then you have to mark it with umbrella. So that is today he is wet. When there are periods of dryness, that is you have not passed urine in the bed, then you have to mark it with star. And after over a period of 1 month, you ask the child to come back and show the calendar. If there are more number of stars, that is if the frequency of the enuresis has come down, then you have to reinforce the child. That is, you should give some positive reinforcement therapies. And there are other treatment modalities like bladder training. You can train the child for the bladder training, and avoid consuming fluids after 6 p.m. in the evening, so that, and ask the child to urinate before going to bed. And we also counsel parents, telling them, we also educate them, telling that whenever they are awake for urination, you tell them to awake the child, ask them to take him for toilet, and so that the frequency of the bedwetting comes down. So today we have learned about sleep, different stages of sleep, why sleep is important, and different sleep disorders and how it has to be treated. So a good laugh and a long sleep are the two best cures for anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna. We have few questions. Shall we start with the questions discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Shruti HK, she has posted on FB. Is
Okay.
taking a nap good or bad for health?
Hmm.
Oh, if good, she's already answered the question. I think she believes it is good. Okay, if good, what is the best specified time for a nap?
Um, Usually, what our books or some researchers say that taking the nap in the morning disturb the sleep wake cycle. So, for elder people, it is necessary if they want, they can take a nap for only 30 minutes. And in adults or younger population, taking a nap for 5 to 10 minutes is more than sufficient because if it persists more than hour, then the night sleep cycle is disturbed.
Okay. Next question. Ma'am, what is the scientific basis on the factor that exercise is helpful for a better sleep? As they also say that exercise helps in keeping a person active and energetic as well. So
Okay.
she has a confusion that exercise is good for a better sleep or it is going to keep the person awake.
Definitely, when we give them that is psychological methods, when we teach them, we say that exercise is good for health. But before going to bedtime, like people say that they go for a walk, they do brisk walking before they go to bed. That should not be done. Doing exercises in the morning hours is good for health and for the sleep cycle also. So exercising, any stimulants, that is anything which stimulates your brain should not be done before going to your bed. That is before bedtime.
Okay. Dr. Manjunath Naik has asked on Facebook, hello to all. Importance of directions for sleep, how to reduce sleep quota.
How to reduce?
Sleep quota, Quata. It is a quota or a quota? I am just not getting it.
Oh, so I'm not understood the question. Next question.
At least the importance of directions for sleep. Directions. If there are any directions you want to, some rules, regulations, fine.
Yeah, I've already explained in the universal sleep hygiene measures that the person should have a sleep wake schedule, which has to be followed regularly. So avoid taking any stimulants after 6 o'clock, that is after 6 p.m., that is tea, caffeine, nicotine should not be taken after 6 p.m.
Um,
And
one more question. Yes, ma'am.
exercising before bedtime should also be avoided. And many people, what they do is they use bed for eating, they use bed for watching television, they use bed for all the activities like office work or studying. So here, the what we tell in universal sleep hygiene measure is you should keep the bed only to sleep and nothing else.
The next question, ma'am, by Sanjay. Management of geriatric insomnia. The
Um,
old people usually complain of insomnia. Maybe that you want to.
Geriatric age group people, as I've told earlier, that the sleep cycle reduces with the age. Like a newborn, they sleep for 16 to 18 hours. Children sleep for 8 to 12 hours. Adults sleep for 4 to 6 hours. And geriatric age, 6 to 8 hours. And geriatric age group people, they sleep only for 4 to 6 hours. So you can teach them rather than giving a pharmacotherapy, load them with medicines. Uh, you can teach them universal sleep hygiene measures, and stimulus control, and restriction therapies, sleep restriction therapies, you can teach them. If after doing all the things, if they still complain of insomnia, first you should take a proper history. Is it a primary insomnia or a secondary insomnia? If it is primary insomnia, then you can teach them psychological treatments and pharmacotherapy for a few weeks. If they have secondary insomnia, try to diagnose if they are having depression, anxiety. Geriatric population, they are more prone for depression and Alzheimer's disease, that is dementia. So first you need to know whether it is secondary insomnia or primary insomnia, and then you can treat accordingly.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. The session is becoming very interesting. Students are asking about Tukaram and Ramnath. Both of them, maybe they are targeting at the same question. Tukaram has asked how to control hypersomnia through lifestyle modification. And one more student has asked Ramnath how students should manage with sleep, especially during exams, means to control their sleep.
Okay. Hypersomnolence, the narcolepsy, which is also a part of hypersomnolence. That is, they say that they sleep for more than 9 hours. The cause has to be ruled out. If there is a primary hypersomnia, then lifestyle modification, fix a regular time period for sleep wake cycle. Okay, there should be a fixed sleep schedule and follow the other universal sleep hygiene measures. And for other question, the answer is many children, even we have done, like not sleeping when there are exams. So that is not correct, because sleep is required for proper brain functioning. To improve your concentration, it improves your memory, and it keeps you alert. So sufficient 6 to 8 hours of sleep is required for the brain to function properly. So during the exam, it is that I think you should prepare right from the first day. It is not that you do night out and start preparing at the last moment. So you should be preparing from the day one your course is being started. So before exams, you need not read anything fresh, because it causes more anxiety. So you should keep 1 month prior to the exams for revision. So sleeping for at least 6 hours before the exams is very much required for the brain, proper brain functioning during your exams. Otherwise, you become very blank. You think that you have forgotten. You are unable to concentrate. So reduce your anxiety. Be confident that you'll be able to face the exams, so that you can sleep well the previous night.
Okay. Next question, ma'am, by Shruti. What is the role of food in preventing insomnia? Role of food.
Food, actually, they say that before going to bedtime, you should not have heavy meal, because of that, many people, they complain of insomnia. They are unable to sleep, and if you are unable to digest spicy things, avoid eating spicy things before. If you have a insomnia problem, try to avoid eating spicy food like chilies, spices in the food. So try to eat fruits, and warm milk is. They have told that drinking warm milk before going to bed is very, very good for insomnia, to have a good sleep.
I think you have already answered this question, why baby sleeps more. I think she'll go through the video.
Okay.
Next question, Aparna, why do some people sleep talk, means talk while sleeping?
That is a part of the normal, that is REM, non-rapid eye movement. So there is not, there is no specific reason why they sleep talk. It is usually seen in children with 4 to 6 years of age group, along with the somnambism, that is sleepwalking. If they are if they are too much tired, or if they have undergone any stressful condition, they sleep talk. But with age, the sleep talking comes down. It reduces with age. So if it is disturbing the day-to-day activities, then only it can be treated.
Okay. One last question, ma'am. Nowadays, the use of mobiles at bedtime has increased. Okay, normal healthy individuals, yeah, they switch off the mobile and they fall asleep. But most of the time, what happens? They get addicted to that. They go on continuously using, and they are unaware that they at reached the midnight.
Hmm.
And is what is the solution for that? How to avoid that?
Actually, this mobile addiction, it is actually called as screen addiction. That is, you're addicted to the screen so much that you're unable to come out of it. One more thing I forgot to tell is there is something called as melatonin. During the night, this melatonin hormone is released, so that it says that okay, now it is night, I have to sleep. So because of this melatonin hormone, it gets to know that it is dark. When you are using mobile at night, it stimulates your brain because through this visual pathway. So because of that, the melatonin doesn't know whether it is day or night. It focuses only on the darkness or the light, and the secretion of melatonin comes down, and the person starts thinking that the person is unable to go to sleep. It is because of the light of the mobile. It is because of the screen which is stimulating your eyes. Through that, it is stimulating the cortex. This is how they are awake whole night. So try in the universal sleep hygiene. I have already told that use the bed only for sleeping. Not only books. I think you should avoid using the mobile during during the sleep, because if you are already facing the sleep problem, if you are already having insomnia, then try avoiding the use of the mobile, because it stimulates the brain.
Okay. I told it was the last question, but sorry, one more last question, ma'am. Here, it is a concept belief that if you're not feeling falling asleep, read some books. You'll definitely have sleep. Is that true? Is that true?
Because if you're not feeling sleepy, going to bed, getting frustrated, getting irritated that you're not falling asleep, uh, it is better read some books, listen to some light music which will not stimulate your brain. When you're feeling drowsy, that time you can go to bed. So that is why when we say that in the stimulus control therapy, go to bed only when you are sleepy, when you feel drowsy. Don't go to bed unnecessarily and get frustrated that you're not feeling sleepy.
Okay, ma'am. I think the discussion has ended. The questions are also ended.
Okay.
Now, thank you for your valuable time, ma'am, and for readily agreeing when I approached you. Thank you very much. Now, I call upon Bindu Madhava. Bindu Madhava, you are here? Bindu Madhava?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Now I request
Hello, yes, ma'am.
finally. Yes, okay. Now I request Mr. Bindu Madhava, final year BMS student, Ayurveda Mahavidyalaya Hubli, to give vote of thanks to Dr. Sapna Pandurangi Madam.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to deliver vote of thanks to all who made today's meeting so wonderful. Now, I would like to thank our chief guest, Dr. Swapna Pandurangi ma'am, for sharing her knowledge with us and took out valuable time from her busy schedule. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Prashant sir, and chairman, Dr. Naregal sir, and Dr. J.R. Joshi sir for their support in making this session and also for the opportunity. Thank you, sir. Organizing team is heart and soul of this session. I thank them personally for their efforts, and also I thank all the staff members of Department of Kaya Chikitsa. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants, students for their patient hearing in this event and making it successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu Madhava. Thank you, Sapna Madam. Thank you. Okay, today the session has ended. A note for tomorrow's session. Tomorrow, day 7, we have with us the speaker, Dr. Leeladhar Sahu. He is going to talk on general introduction and principles of management of diseases caused by pancreas, that is as an endocrine gland. Okay, at 2:30. I request all of you to please log in at 2:30. Thank you.
Thank you.